Beneath the quiet fields of a distant world, a tree burns with blue fire that gives no warmth, its roots hiding an ancient secret older than human memory. When the flames falter and the ground begins to breathe, something stirs below, something alive, waiting to rise and change everything we think we know about life itself. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The dawn broke quietly over the farmlands on Kepler 442b. Mist curled along the fields, soft and silver, while the air held the crisp scent of dry grain. Minsu Park stood at the edge of his property and stared at the old oak tree. It had been burning for 4 days without stopping. Yet the leaves stayed green, and no ash ever fell. The fire glowed deep blue, cold and beautiful, wrapping the trunk like a calm river of light. There was no crackle of flames, no smoke to choke the air, and no heat to warm his skin. It was a fire that looked alive, but felt like nothing at all. Minsu rubbed his eyes, wondering if he was tired enough to be imagining it. He was a quiet man who had worked this farm his whole life. He had planted every grain stalk, repaired every worn fence post, and memorized the way the wind bent the grass before storms. Nothing on this land had ever behaved in a way he could not understand. Until now, the burning tree stood silent and strange, a riddle planted right in the center of his life. His grandmother, Dayun, came down the porch steps carrying 2 cups of tea. Her movements were slow but sure, and her eyes carried the kind of sharpness that age could not dull. She handed him 1 cup and stood beside him. Together they watched the blue flames ripple over the bark. She did not speak for a long moment. Then she said, "It is wrong," but not angry. Her voice was calm, almost curious. "Listen to it. Dangerous things do not whisper." Minsu tilted his head. At first, there was only the quiet sound of morning wind and the creak of the barn roof. But then he caught it, a faint, steady hum coming from inside the oak. It was soft, like the echo of a distant bell or the heartbeat of something small. The sound did not match the sight of the flames. It was too gentle, too careful. He stepped closer, without meaning to. The ground felt cool under his boots, cooler than the air, as though the soil was breathing inward. He saw something new on the bark. Small holes dotted the trunk, round and clean, each the size of his thumb. The edges were smooth, too perfect to be the work of insects. He touched the nearest one. A faint tingling passed through his fingertips, light and sharp, like static after lightning. He pulled his hand back quickly, heart beating fast. The flames gave off no heat, but they left a strange energy in his skin. Later that morning, Han-jun, his neighbor, came to borrow a wrench. He stopped mid-step when he saw the tree. "What happened here?" he asked, his voice dropping without him meaning it to. "Has it been like this all night?" 4 days, Minsu said. Han-jun frowned and stepped back. "It's probably something from the terraforming machines," he said, though he sounded unsure. "I can report it if you want." "This is older than machines," Minsu replied. Han-jun said nothing more. He left with the wrench, but looked back 3 times before disappearing down the road. As the sun rose higher, The fire grew brighter, glowing like deep ocean water. Daeun sat on a folded blanket near the fence and watched without fear. She began speaking softly, telling the stories her own mother had once told her. She spoke of the Ithari, travelers who came before humans, who shaped living worlds with patience and care. They were said to light trees with fire that did not burn, marking the places where life was strongest. Minsu listened. Though he had always thought those stories were only myths to pass long winters, yet the tree before him hummed like something alive. The more he watched it, the more he felt as if it were waiting, not dying, not growing, just waiting. The thought gave him a strange chill. That night, sleep did not come. The hum from the tree seemed to echo in his chest. At 3 a.m, he took his flashlight and crossed the yard. The oak still burned blue. The small holes had multiplied. His light could not reach their bottoms. Faint tapping sounds came from inside, gentle and rhythmic. He stood there, breath held, listening. For a moment, he imagined something inside the wood, small and patient, knocking to be let out. As the wind whispered through the fields, Minsu whispered back. "I hear you," he said, not knowing if he spoke to the tree or to the silence around it. The tree hummed on, blue and steady, while the stars wheeled overhead. The world was changing, and the first sign of it was this silent fire that gave no warmth. It waited, and so did he, not knowing that the story had only just begun. The morning after the 4th night of burning, the air over Minsu Park's farm felt different. It carried a strange stillness, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The old oak tree still glowed with calm blue fire, wrapping the trunk in soft ribbons of light. There was no smoke, no heat, and yet the flames burned brighter than ever. Minsu stood by the fence, his boots in the cold dew, and watched. The small holes in the bark had grown larger overnight, their edges glowing faintly like embers buried in deep snow. The hum was stronger now, no longer soft, but steady and low, as if the ground was humming back. Daeun, his grandmother, was already awake. She moved across the yard, carrying a folded blanket and a cup of tea. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said quietly. Minsu only nodded. His eyes stayed on the tree. The longer he watched, the more he felt something beneath his feet, a faint rhythm in the earth, almost like distant footsteps. Daeun lowered herself onto the blanket, crossed her legs, and rested her hands in her lap. "The soil is listening," she murmured, as though speaking to the land itself. Minsu crouched and pressed his palm to the ground. The soil was cool, but a subtle vibration pulsed through it. It felt like a heartbeat buried far below the roots. The sensation sent a shiver along his arms. It was nothing like the mechanical tremors from the terraforming machines that often rumbled far off in the distance. This was softer, alive and old. By midday, the quiet rhythm under the ground had grown stronger. Tiny cracks appeared in the dirt around the tree's base, as if the soil was gently shifting from below. Birds that normally sang in the hedgerows stayed silent. Even the wind seemed to avoid the burning oak, bending away before reaching its branches. The whole farm had fallen into an unnatural hush. Han-jun returned with his tablet, muttering about measuring thermal patterns. When he placed his sensors near the roots, the screen showed nothing normal, just waves of shifting magnetic fields that rose and sank like tides. He stepped back, his face pale. "It's not coming from the tree," he said quietly. "It's coming from under it." That afternoon, a small white transport rolled up the dirt road. A woman stepped out, her boots sinking into the soft ground. She introduced herself as Dr. Yuna Cho from the Colonial Research Council. Her uniform was clean and sharp, but her eyes were tired, like someone who had seen too many impossible things. She shook Minsu's hand, then walked toward the burning oak without hesitation. When she reached the tree, she froze. The soft hum filled the air, like the inside of a seashell. "This should not be happening," she whispered. "Doctor." Cho unpacked a ground scanner from her vehicle and began setting it. The device sent pulses of sound deep into the earth and mapped the echoes that returned. The scanner's screen lit up with lines and shadows that twisted into strange patterns. Minsu stood beside her, watching as new shapes appeared on the display. What he saw made his mouth go dry. Beneath his farm, deep in the bedrock, lay a structure. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, a web of smooth corridors and vast circular chambers, carved with impossible precision. "This isn't natural," Dr. Cho said, her voice low. "Someone built this." Her fingers trembled on the scanner controls. "And it's waking up." As the machine gathered more data, faint pulses of heat began rising from the largest chamber directly below the tree. The scanner showed the temperature shifting from cold to warm in slow, steady waves. Minsu stared at the screen. "They're alive," he said, though he was not sure how he knew. Dr. Cho didn't argue. She only watched the line shift and pulse, like breathing. "They've been sleeping," she said, "and now something is calling them." Minsu stepped closer to the tree. The blue flames wavered gently, as if stirred by an invisible wind. The holes in the bark glowed brighter, and from within them came a faint tapping sound, almost like soft knuckles on a door. He felt the vibrations rising through his boots, steady and slow, carrying meaning that he could not yet understand. His farm had always been quiet soil and hard work. Now it was the center of something vast and hidden, something that had waited for longer than humans had existed. The hum deepened, the ground trembled, and the air tasted faintly of metal. The signals under the soil were growing stronger. Whatever lay buried was listening, and it was beginning to answer. The fifth morning arrived with a pale sun and air heavy with silence. Minsu Park stood near the old oak tree, his breath clouding in the cool light. The blue flames no longer danced gently. They burned tall and steady now, curling around the trunk like glowing ribbons pulled upward by unseen hands. The holes in the bark were wide enough to see deep into the wood, and faint blue light pulsed inside them like a slow heartbeat. Minsu felt that the tree was no longer just burning. It was breathing. Dr. Una Cho returned with more equipment. She had not slept, and her sharp eyes flicked constantly between her scanner and the tree. Daeun brought them tea and sat on her blanket again, calm as ever. "The soil sings louder today," she said softly, though no one else could hear it. Minsu pressed his boots deeper into the earth. The ground felt alive beneath him, trembling faintly as if something deep below was pushing upward. Even the birds were gone now. The farm was wrapped in stillness. At noon, the air changed. The blue flames around the oak flared brighter than the sun, and then folded inward. The holes in the bark lit up all at once, flooding the clearing with cold light. The hum became a roar that seemed to come from inside the ground. Min-Su shielded his eyes. Dr. Cho whispered, "It's happening." The bark cracked with a soft, clean sound like breaking glass. Then a small shape pushed through. It tumbled to the earth with a soft thud, no larger than a house cat. It lay still for a moment, coated in thin scales that shifted between silver and gold, depending on the light. Then it lifted its head. Two enormous eyes blinked slowly, glowing with the same blue light as the flames. The creature's movements were clumsy, like a newborn foal trying to stand for the first time. It let out a small, trembling sound halfway between a chirp and a sigh. Min-Su stepped forward without thinking. Dr. Cho raised a hand to stop him, but he kept walking. The tiny being looked up at him, and something passed between them, silent, sudden, and impossible. Min-Su's thoughts filled with flashes of light and shapes, fragments of color and sound that were not his own. He saw endless fields growing under alien suns and vast gardens suspended in space. He saw others, like this one, moving like living constellations through the dark. The images came and vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving his heart racing. The creature wobbled on soft legs and stumbled toward him. When its tiny claws touched his boot, another vision flared through his mind. This land, his farm, as it could be. The dry fields glowed rich and green, and the air shimmered with invisible currents of life. Every plant, every stone, every drop of water was connected, humming together in quiet harmony. He felt tears sting his eyes. It was showing him a future. "What is it doing to you?" Dr. Cho asked, her voice tight with wonder. "It's sharing," Min-Su said softly. "It's showing me what it remembers." The creature gave a soft trill. Min-Su knelt carefully and held out his hand. It climbed onto his palm without fear. Its scales were warm and faintly glowing now. The connection between their minds grew clearer. He felt not only its memories, but also its emotions. Confusion, exhaustion, and a deep yearning for safety. It was alone, the last of its kind to awaken. It needed a name. "Lum," Min-Su whispered. "Your name is Lum." The little being chirped in approval, a bright sound like sunlight striking glass. It curled up on his shoulder, wrapping its delicate tail around his neck. More flashes filled his mind, but these were calmer, images of underground chambers, each one holding others like Lum, still asleep in crystal nests. He understood now. Lum was not meant to be alone. The others were waiting, and they were running out of time. Dr. Cho had not moved. Her scanner beeped softly beside her. "The underground chambers," she said. "The heat signatures are rising fast. They're all waking." Lum lifted its head and made a soft, clicking call. Faint echoes answered from deep underground. Distant, but real. Min-Su felt the sound vibrate through his bones. The blue flames flickered around the tree again, weaker now, like a torch guttering before it goes out. Their signal was almost complete. Something vast was about to begin. Minsu looked at Lum, glowing gently on his shoulder, and knew the quiet life he had known was over. The soil under his feet was no longer only soil. It was a cradle, and the world inside it was ready to rise. The sun rose slow and red over the patches of soil, pulsed faintly with pale light. Sprouts rose from bare earth overnight, their roots twisting in spirals that followed invisible lines beneath the surface. Dr. Yuna Cho paced nearby, her scanner flashing with streams of data. The underground chambers were stirring faster now. Heat signatures flared in every direction, like constellations awakening under the soil. "They're coming," she whispered. "Not just a few. All of them." By noon, the first crystal shells broke the surface. They rose like buried moons pushing through the ground, smooth and glowing with cold blue fire. The soil split gently around them, as if it wanted them to be free. Inside each shell, something moved. Dozens of eyes reflected the light. Minsu knelt by the nearest one, and Lum slipped from his shoulder to press its small hands against the surface. The crystal turned clear. Inside lay a creature, twice Lum's size, curled in sleep, its scales glimmering like molten copper. More shells surfaced every hour. The clearing around the oak became a field of stars trapped in glass. People began arriving from nearby farms, drawn by whispers of what was happening. They came carrying tools, food, and quiet awe. Daeun served tea as if it were a village festival, her calm presence steadying the air. Soldiers and corporate officials arrived too, their voices sharp and wary. They spoke of containment, of safety, of control. But the sight of the glowing shells slowed their steps and softened their words. The creatures inside were not weapons. They were sleeping children. As the day faded, the first of the larger beings emerged. Its crystal shell cracked open in slow, graceful silence. It stepped onto the soil, like a shadow becoming solid. Its scales shimmered through every color of the horizon, and its eyes held the weight of centuries. When it looked at Minsu, the world seemed to pause. A thought moved into his mind, not words, but clear as speech. It thanked him. It showed him what they were offering. The vision was vast. He saw roots stretching through the planet like veins, carrying light instead of water. He saw stars reflected in lakes that sang with life. Every grain of soil held whispers of memory. Every tree hummed with quiet thought. The planet was not just alive. It was aware. The beings called themselves the Ithari, though the name felt more like a song than a word. They had not come to rule or to conquer. They had come to invite. The offer was simple. They would share their knowledge with any human who wished to join them, not as servants, but as partners. Those who accepted would become part of the planet's living network. They would feel the heartbeat of soil, hear the voices of rivers, and speak with the wind in the branches. They would still be human, yet also something more. But it would be permanent. Once connected, they could never return to being separate. The corporate officials argued. The soldiers warned of risk, but the Ithari did not force. They only waited. The choice was not theirs to make. It belonged to the humans standing on this small patch of waking earth. Minsu looked at Lum, who gazed up at him with patient trust. He looked at the farmers who had come to help, at Dr. Cho, with her trembling hands and shining eyes, at Dayun, who smiled as if she had known this moment would come. Then he stepped forward. He pressed his hand to the soil. The earth sang into his skin, soft and endless. His thoughts stretched outward like roots, and stars bloomed behind his eyes. The connection opened gently, without pain, like coming home to a place he had never known he missed. When he rose, he could feel the land breathing through him. The others watched in silence. Then, one by one, they too placed their hands on the earth. As the last light of day faded, the field of crystal shells opened like a galaxy unfolding. The Athari rose from the soil, luminous and ancient. And the humans who had chosen to join them stood among them, no longer just caretakers of the land, but part of its living song. The invitation had been accepted. Roots reached for the stars, and the stars reached back.